Do you know how wonderful it feels to be a beautiful woman? This burly man couldn't help but take out a lovely doll and wanted to give it to Snow White. A man who was proposing saw Snow White and became completely distracted, which made his girlfriend so angry that she slapped him across the face. It didn't matter if she accidentally disturbed someone's work. The craftsman simply changed the statue to look like Snow White because of her beauty. On Snow White's journey to find her father, strangers treated her kindly. By chance, she noticed a wanted poster of herself on the wall, and the soldiers searching for her were not far away. Soon, the soldiers spotted her. Snow White hurried to escape, but accidentally ran into a dead end. Watching the figures gradually approaching, she stood there frozen, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, Snow White thought of a plan. When the soldiers caught up, they only saw a mirror moving. The soldiers couldn't help but show creepy smiles, but when they moved the mirror aside, the person in front of them turned out to be a chubby girl. Seeing it wasn't Snow White, the soldiers left. It turned out Snow White had taken off her magic shoes earlier, but then, the shoes were picked up by another group of soldiers. Seeing a chubby girl, they didn't hesitate to mock her. Snow White didn't want to provoke them, but they became increasingly aggressive. Just then, Arthur and Merlin passed by. Snow White quickly called out for help. Arthur, seeing someone he didn't know, simply walked away. Even Merlin didn't step forward to help. Meanwhile, the soldiers behind her continued to mock Snow White. Snow White grew furious and fought with the soldiers, but how could one person defeat so many? She was soon cornered against a wall. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck and electrocuted the soldiers. It turned out Merlin had rushed back.
Your red shoes, milady.
This act of kindness moved Snow White. After putting the shoes back on, Snow White transformed again, but as soon as she stepped out of the alley, she was spotted by soldiers again. Luckily, the big rabbit also noticed Snow White, so they helped her escape. Finally, after fleeing, the big rabbit collapsed exhausted on the ground. Because of what happened earlier, Snow White and Merlin grew closer, and a magical bond formed between them. However, one day, the prince arrived with soldiers to capture Snow White. Seeing the charging soldiers, Merlin and the other three picked up their weapons and charged forward. They quickly dealt with the soldiers, but because of their small size, they were knocked out by a strong soldier's hammer blow. Even Arthur's sword was shattered, just as Arthur was about to be crushed.
Come on!
The dwarf's attack proved ineffective, and they were both knocked out immediately. Then, an invisible dwarf secretly rescued Snow White, but they were soon discovered by the prince, and quickly cornered near a wall. At that moment, the robots of the other three dwarfs rushed out, and swiftly took care of several soldiers, but unexpectedly, the prince called for cannons. Seeing Snow White about to be hit, Merlin pushed her out of the way at the last moment. Because of the cannon blast, the house collapsed, burying all the soldiers underneath. With the danger over, Snow White excitedly hugged Merlin.
Huh?
After all these events, during one evening, Merlin finally got his wish. But then, Merlin realized he hadn't changed back. He couldn't understand why. The reason was actually quite simple. What he loved at that moment was only the fair and beautiful maiden, not the real Snow White. Suddenly, wooden monsters appeared in the forest, and there was more than one. Merlin, still in dwarf form, couldn't use his full strength. In desperation, he asked Snow White to close her eyes. Returning to his normal self, Merlin easily defeated the wooden monsters. Just as Merlin was feeling proud, a wooden monster climbed up and pulled Merlin down the cliff with it. Without hesitation, Snow White jumped into the water after him, but Merlin was trapped under a heavy rock and couldn't move it at all. Seeing Merlin unconscious, she took off her shoes, regaining the strength of her chubby form, lifted the rock, and saved him. When Merlin woke up, he realized the fair and beautiful girl from before was just an ordinary-looking girl. He couldn't accept this, so he left Snow White behind and walked away alone. Snow White was heartbroken, wandering alone in the forest. As she walked, she ran into Merlin again. This time, he actually took out an apple.
Eat the apple, then they'll slide right off.
Where did you get that? Merlin?